welcome back this evening. It's late now, the kind of hour when the world above has gone quiet, and even the wind seems to lose its way. There's a stillness beneath everything tonight, as though the ground itself is listening. And somewhere deep below, far beyond where roots usually reach, there's a light that never fades. Not bright, just waiting. Tonight's story is called The Tree That Glowed Beneath the Earth. It's about a place hidden below the soil, where stone turns to glass and light hums softly inside the dark. They say it began as a seed dropped by accident, buried too deep to ever grow. But the earth has a strange way of keeping its own kind of memory. And so it grew anyway, slow, silent, unseen, until one day the ground began to shine. So let the noise of the world settle above you. Breathe gently. Feel the weight of the air grow softer, the thoughts drifting farther away. We're going underground tonight, where time moves differently and light remembers what it used to be. Let's begin. The path that led me underground wasn't one I meant to find. It started as a narrow split in the hillside, no wider than a doorway, half hidden behind a curtain of vines. From a distance, it looked like nothing more than a shadow, the kind that disappears when you blink. But when I stepped closer, I felt a faint breath of cool air rising from within, as though the hill itself had sighed. It didn't smell of earth or stone. It smelled like rain. The air was still, but alive in a way I couldn't name. Every sound from the forest above grew faint until it vanished completely. Even my heartbeat seemed to quiet, matching the rhythm of something much slower, much deeper. I reached out and touched the wall beside me, smooth, almost polished, warm to the touch. It felt less like rock and more like something that had been shaped by patience. As I moved forward, faint light began to appear in the distance. Not a reflection or a trick of my eyes. It pulsed gently, like a candle behind layers of glass. The deeper I went, the brighter it became, though it never hurt to look at. The glow painted the passage in shades of soft green and blue, shifting with every step. I couldn't tell if it was coming from ahead or from the air itself. The tunnel curved and opened into a wide cavern, and there, at the center, stood a tree. Its trunk rose from the rock like a column of amber, wide at the base, narrowing as it reached toward the unseen ceiling. The branches spread like veins through water, glowing faintly from within. The light it gave off wasn't constant. It pulsed, breathing softly in time with the quiet around it. I stood frozen, unsure if what I saw was alive or simply remembering how to be. Every leaf shimmered with faint translucence, turning slowly as if stirred by a wind that didn't exist. And beneath its roots, the ground shimmered faintly, not dirt, but smooth, glassy stone that caught the glow and held it close. It was as though the light wasn't escaping the tree at all. It was returning to it. The air near the tree felt different. Not warmer, not colder, just thicker, as if filled with a quiet weight that pressed gently against my skin. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like standing near something that remembered more than it should. A place that had kept a secret long enough for it to turn into peace. The roots stretched far across the cavern floor, curling around stones and into crevices that disappeared into the dark. They shimmered faintly beneath their surface, small rivers of light winding through them in slow, steady motion, The light wasn't white or gold. It was something softer, a pale green, like the last memory of daylight filtering through deep water. It pulsed, slow and rhythmic, matching the quiet echo of my breath. I walked closer, my footsteps muffled by a fine layer of dust. The ground was smooth, not from erosion but from stillness. It had been untouched for longer than I could imagine. When I placed my hand against the trunk, it felt warm. Not the warmth of life exactly, more like the memory of sunlight stored deep inside. It hummed faintly, a vibration that moved through my fingers and up my arm. Tiny motes of light drifted down from above, vanishing before they reached the ground. They looked like dust at first, but they fell too slowly for that. Each one carried its own faint glow, flickering like the remnants of distant stars. When they touched the tree's branches, the light within them brightened for a moment before fading back into rhythm. It was as if the tree was breathing them in. I tilted my head, trying to see where they came from. The ceiling of the cavern stretched upward farther than I expected, vanishing into pale mist. The light pulsed along the walls in slow waves, spreading outward from the trunk like ripples on a lake. Each pulse carried a faint sound, a low, harmonic tone, almost a whisper. I couldn't understand it, but I didn't need to. The tree was speaking in the only language the earth still remembered. After a while, I stopped trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There was no logic here, not the kind that fit in daylight. The longer I stayed, the more I felt the edges of reason smooth out like pebbles tumbling underwater. I let the quiet take over. It seemed like the right thing to do. I sat down near the roots, close enough to feel the faint vibration through the ground. It wasn't a sound exactly, more a pulse, steady and sure, the slow heartbeat of something older than memory. Every time it moved through the stone, a soft shimmer passed through the cavern, touching the far walls before fading. The air carried a taste I couldn't name, metallic but sweet, like the scent that lingers after a storm. I closed my eyes, and the light continued behind my eyelids, a soft pattern of colors shifting in silence. When I opened them again, I thought I saw movement near the far edge of the chamber. Something small, pale, and quick darted between the roots. It left behind a faint shimmer, as if dusted with the same glow as the tree. I couldn't tell if it was an animal or just the light playing tricks. Still, the thought that something else might live here made the place feel less lonely. I kept watching, and slowly I began to notice more of them. Faint outlines shifting in the dimness. They moved gracefully, as if carried by the same rhythm that pulsed through the ground. Their shapes changed with every glance, first like small creatures, then like drifting wisps of smoke. They didn't approach me, but they didn't hide either. They simply existed, like memories that had forgotten they were supposed to fade. The longer I stayed, the slower time seemed to move. It wasn't that hours passed unnoticed. It was that they didn't seem to pass at all. The light continued its quiet pulse, and the air remained thick and calm, as if the world above had stopped turning. I began to feel as though I was part of the cavern itself, breathing in rhythm with it, dissolving into its quiet. And when I finally stood again, I felt lighter, as if I'd left something behind, though I couldn't say what. I began walking again, slowly tracing the line of roots as they stretched away from the trunk. Each one seemed to follow its own direction, splitting and curling like rivers frozen mid-flow. Some disappeared into cracks in the rock, others formed gentle arches that glowed faintly from within. When I stepped beneath one, it felt like walking through the frame of a doorway, though it led nowhere at all. The air hummed softly, as if aware of the motion. The cavern widened, revealing a cluster of smaller trees, or perhaps reflections of the same one. Their glow was dimmer, softer, like distant embers. They didn't pulse on their own. Instead, they flickered in time with the larger tree's rhythm, responding to its breath. I wondered if they were seeds that had grown down here, or echoes that simply took root in light instead of soil. Either way, the space felt alive, but in a way that had nothing to do with growth. At the far edge of the chamber, I found a pool. It was shallow, perfectly still, and clear enough to see the stone beneath. The light of the great tree stretched across it like a second world, mirrored and trembling. When I crouched beside it, I could see my reflection, faint, transparent, and flickering like everything else here. The water rippled, even though I hadn't touched it. I leaned closer, and for a moment I thought I saw something below the surface. Shapes, slow and deliberate, moving just beneath the reflection of the roots. They looked like shadows, except they gave off a faint light of their own. They swam in looping circles, spiraling toward the center, fading before they reached it. When I blinked, they were gone, leaving only stillness behind. I touched the edge of the pool with my fingertip. The surface broke quietly, and the reflection of the tree shattered into ripples of liquid light. They spread outward, clinging to the rocks, faintly glowing for a moment before vanishing. The pool steadied again, perfectly smooth. It was as if nothing had ever disturbed it. Not me, not time, not even memory. I stayed near the pool for a long time, though I couldn't say how long that really was. Time here didn't seem to behave. Moments stretched and folded into one another until I couldn't tell where one began or ended. It felt like sitting inside a breath that never needed to be taken. Just the slow, steady pulse of something endlessly patient. When I finally turned back toward the tree, I noticed how its glow had changed. The light wasn't stronger, but it reached farther, spilling softly into places it hadn't touched before. It crawled along the cavern walls, revealing carvings I hadn't seen earlier. At first, they looked like cracks, but as I stepped closer, I saw that they formed deliberate shapes. Patterns resembling leaves, eyes, or perhaps maps, etched deep into the rock and glowing faintly from within. I ran my hand along one of the carvings. The surface felt warm, smooth, and almost alive, like skin that had been waiting to be touched. The light beneath it brightened slightly at my touch, following the path of my fingers. I couldn't understand what the symbols meant, but they felt familiar, as if I'd seen them before in dreams I could never quite remember. It wasn't knowledge exactly, more a kind of recognition without words. As I traced another mark, I heard the faint tone again, that low, resonant hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It grew softer this time, gentler, as if responding to the movement of my hand. The ground beneath my feet pulsed once, a single, steady thrum, and then fell still. I realized I was no longer hearing the sound. I was feeling it deep inside my chest. It echoed the rhythm of my heartbeat. Something about that connection felt right, like finding an old melody you didn't realize you still remembered. The pulse, the light, the air, everything seemed to move together in quiet agreement. Even the faint drifting motes seemed to hover more slowly now, circling in small loops before fading into the roots. The tree, it seemed, was listening too. Eventually, the light began to fade again, returning to its softer rhythm. The carvings dimmed until they were only faint outlines, absorbed once more by the stone. The hum quieted to a near silence, a sound I could only feel, not hear. It didn't vanish completely. It simply became part of the stillness, the same way distant waves disappear into the sea. I took one last look at the glowing tree, and it seemed to breathe out, slow and calm, as though content that I had understood what little I could. I turned toward the passage I'd come from, half expecting it to be gone. But there it was, faintly lit by the glow that now lingered on my hands and clothes. When I walked, the roots beneath me gave slightly, soft as earth after rain. The air thinned the closer I came to the tunnel, and the light from behind me began to fade. Still, even when the darkness returned, it didn't feel empty. As I climbed upward, I noticed how the glow from my skin had begun to fade too. Not quickly, it dimmed like a candle that knows it's done its work. By the time I reached the place where the tunnel opened to the surface, the last bit of it was gone. Only the faint warmth on my palms remained, a quiet reminder that I'd truly been there. That something real had waited below the world, patient and unbothered by time. The forest above was unchanged. The same wind moved through the trees, the same soft hum of night birds and insects. The stars looked no different, though one seemed slightly brighter than before. Maybe it was the light still fading from my eyes, or maybe the world had simply borrowed a little of what lay below. Either way, the darkness didn't seem quite as dark anymore. I stood there for a while, listening to the forest breathe. It felt connected now, the sky above, the earth below, and everything between them. And when I finally turned to walk home, I carried the quiet with me, that steady, glowing calm that seemed to hum just beneath the noise of the world. Maybe it would fade by morning, but for now, it stayed. So here's where the story ends. Down in the quiet, where the light never needed to rise or set. Where time folded softly into itself and the world remembered what it meant to simply be still. The tree remains, patient, glowing, waiting for nothing in particular. And maybe that's the lesson in it. If you find yourself chasing the hours again, just think of the roots that grew without permission, the light that found its place in the dark. And remember, not everything that shines needs to be seen. Some things are meant to glow quietly, unseen and uninterrupted. The kind of calm that doesn't fade, even when you wake. So rest here for a little while longer. Let the last of the sound drift away. Let the air grow still. You've been here with me beneath the earth, in the company of light that never leaves. Now it's time to sleep.